Be the king.
Hey guys, how's it going?
TJump.
Oh, TJump's here. Cool.
Think so.
Hi, TJump.
Hey Godless, how's it going? Can you guys hear me?
Hello.
Yellow.
Yeah, I gave you mods if you want to mute it. If you need to mute anyone,
Okay,
you don't have to take any bullshit.
cool.
Mike, you might know him by Michael Klein. MK has been really interested in your epistemology.
Okay.
He doesn't want to talk to you tonight, but he's been talking a lot to me about you. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Nope.
Oh, I guess you had some conversation with him, mostly in text though. So I wanted to know from you, what do you think of Aaron Ra? What is your opinion? Because I think he's like, think it's an embarrassment to atheists that he's like famous on the internet. Actually, it's an embarrassment to fucking humanity.
I think he's really well studied on biology and evolution and does a really great job of educating and publicizing about those, and especially about politics and the corruption of history by the Texas Board of Education. I think he does really great jobs on those. I don't think he's really as read up on philosophy, but I think that he does really well on the other fields. Also, he's extremely entertaining
debating
too.
science and evolution, but he doesn't. He fucking runs his mouth trying to engage in philosophical arguments when he doesn't know any philosophy. He's a moron.
I don't think that's a problem. Like, I go up against people when I don't know shit either, but that's kind of how you learn. If you to start a new topic, the best way to do it is to jump in and do a debate against somebody and lose, and then when you lose, you can learn from your mistakes and improve. So I don't see it as a problem when you.
Well, the problem is he doesn't learn. He's been doing it for years.
No, he's been learning. Like, I know he's actually sent me questions about stuff I said. And like, well, what does this mean? How do you do this? So he's definitely trying to learn for sure. He's changed and improved in a lot of ways.
Okay, so I'm not trying to debate you or anything. I'm just trying to ask questions for MK because he was confused about your position. So I'm just trying to clarify your position. I think therefore I am thing. You said that's your starting.
You cut out after that's your starting. What? What'd you say, Godless? You cut out after that's you're starting something.
I can hear you.
Yeah, Godless, we can hear you.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Did you say that it's an axiom?
What? Did I say what's an
think
axiom?
therefore I am.
No, I said it's an experience. It's an internal experience.
Okay. I don't know. I didn't hear you say. I was going to other people's side. Did you say that thoughts and self is synonymous?
Yes, thought and self is synonymous.
Okay. And are you a coherentist or a foundationalist or what?
Foundationalist, probably. Can you put a link to to your Discord in here somewhere so I can copy it and put it in my YouTube chat?
Yeah, just a second. I gotta switch to push to talk. Okay. I'm not really trying to debate you. I just want to like casual. If anybody else wants to say anything, they can. I want to. Hi, Brenda. Who do you think like is the dumbest atheist that's famous on the internet?
I have no idea. Yeah, I was tempted to say that. That was the first thing that came to my mind.
Wait, do you think that I'm dumb?
No, it would be funny if I said it. I don't actually know. Like, I don't really think about and try to compare other people's intelligence, so I have no idea. But it would have been funny if I said it, though.
Well, do you know of another a more adept female debater?
Godless engineer is the dumbest atheist on the internet.
Hi, Brenda.
Hi, Brenda.
What does it mean to engineer? What does that mean?
Is that like
Godless engineer? That's his name. That's what he goes by.
Oh, I thought you said that I engineered the dumbest. Okay, yeah, I know Godless.
No. That's his name. Godless engineer. That's his name, and I named him as the dumbest atheist on the internet.
The raging atheist is pretty dumb, but he's humble about his stupidity. So he doesn't try to act arrogant. What I hate is when like the dumb atheists act arrogant.
pineapple on pizza is a sin? Don't ever put pineapple on pizza. Somebody asked that in my chat.
I'm the dumbest.
Pineapple and Canadian bacon is perfectly acceptable on pizza.
Sacrilegious.
Oh, how's your? I intend to watch it. I haven't watched it yet. Your conversation with Canadian Catholic. How did that go?
It went well. I mean, he didn't Jay Dyer, so he actually listened and engaged with the conversation for the most part, and he brought up coherent arguments. It made sense what he was saying, even though they are not sound. So, I mean, I think it went well. I enjoyed talking with him. He's not annoying.
Who do you think the strongest Christian debaters are in the debate community?
Depends on what you mean. Like, there's different categories of being good. Like, William Lane Craig is extremely good at communicating. He's very good at debate rhetoric, even though his arguments are just garbage. But there are certain theists who are extremely intelligent, like Richard Swinburne, Alvin Plantinga, who make very strong arguments that are hard to debunk because of their structure is very well founded. But even though they're really terrible at debate tactics because it's too philosophical. So I think those guys would be probably for the intellectual side. I think Pete Enns is probably the most honest theist debater. He has, I think, the most coherent, strongest theist position of anybody else, of any theist.
Oh, I actually agree with you. Like Plantinga's arguments are the strongest, but he's not a good debater. Like William Lane Craig has the debate tactics. What's impressive about William Lane Craig though is that he's so adept in different areas, like philosophy, cosmology, and theology. So I noticed when he'll go, like if he's going against a cosmologist, he'll use like philosophy against him, and if he's going against a philosopher, he'll use like empirical, scientific claims that the philosopher is not going to be familiar with.
Yeah, that was...
but no, I was asking. I didn't mean like famous philosophers. I meant in like a YouTube debate community. What Christians are the strongest?
Randall Rouser.
Well, I'd still consider him an academic. Randall Rouser's a PhD in philosophy. So, of the YouTubers, I don't know.
Ray Comfort.
Ray Comfort. Can't
Is
tell.
he still around?
Yep. He debated on Modern Day Debate a while ago.
I don't.
what
Oh
about
yeah,
John
Aaron
Lennon?
Rod just debated some flat earther. I think a lot of flat earthers don't really believe this shit. They're just trolls.
It's possible, but I don't really care if they're pose or not. Like, it's like an appeal to authority fallacy. It doesn't matter if they're honest or dishonest. What matters is whether or not their arguments are logical or coherent or not. Whether or not they actually believe them doesn't make a difference. So, like, you could say a stupid argument and not believe it, and it'd still be right.
What's your favorite area of philosophy?
Probably epistemology.
Oh, that's one of my after free will. That's my favorite epistemology. What's your position on free will?
There is no free will. It's logically impossible.
Yeah, I mean, well, you could like believe libertarian free will is logically impossible and still be a compatibilist, but I don't. I'm a free will skeptic. I don't think that free will exists in any sense.
Yeah, I grant compatibilism because it's just redefining neurological determinism, so I'm fine with that. I just would say, when I say free will, I always mean the libertarian kind.
What's
Pretty
your
much.
position on socialism,
I think socialism is more moral than capitalism, but I think it's less pragmatic. So it's less likely to succeed because it requires more people working in tandem and it takes less to cause massive corruption in socialism because it requires so much more cohesion in the group. And so I think it's a riskier system, even though it's more moral and tries to value people better than capitalism does. It's just less functional, less pragmatic. So I support more capitalism than socialism. Why is free will?
Nozick or Rawls? Go.
Both. Like I like John Rawls's idea of the veil of ignorance, the fact that you should build a society behind which you don't know where you're going to be placed in the society. I think that's a really great intuitive model for assessing a moral system. I don't think it is a moral system in and of itself, but it's a good way to assess moral systems. Nozick, I think Nozick has a lot of really interesting ideas. I don't agree with him on a lot of them, but his ideas on the problem of identity are really interesting. I know I quoted him on a few things. I don't remember what they are on the top of my head, but I know Nozick's society is the one where everyone should be free to move from city to city unimpeded or something like that. And I totally agree. Like that's essentially the foundation of my objective morality. But again, it's just not pragmatic because people aren't free to move from city to city. It costs money, it costs resources, it costs time. You have a family. And so it's definitely an idealistic system that's right morally, but it's impossible to implement pragmatically given our resource limitations. So I would say the same essential thing as socialism. It's a great system in theory, but it is impossible to put in part in practice yet.
Is this some kind of AMA?
I guess so.
Hey, TJump.
Hey, how's it going?
What does TJump mean?
It's my name. It's like my first name is Tom and my last name is Jump.
Really?
Yes.
Some name.
Yeah, that is exactly what I felt in grade school when kids were like, "Hey, jump, jump. Why don't you jump, jump, jump?"
Oh, I was thinking something else. I think I remember seeing something, different kinds of jumps and notations in programming language, particularly C++ here. I'm going to whip up the Microsoft Docs website to quickly find it here. So I'm just going to be doing that.
Yeah, I don't do programming, so not my thing.
I thought it was uncanny when I saw it. I was like, oh, is this where he got his name from? Huh.
When is your book getting published?
One of my books has a publisher lined up, and I'm working with a co-author on it's a debate book about morality, Christian morality versus atheistic morality, and that should hopefully be published next year. I don't have a publisher for my epistemology book. Hopefully my morality book takes off and I can get a big publisher for my epistemology one.
You're publishing a book in epistemology.
I'm publishing a book in morality, and hopefully that gives me a publisher for my epistemology one. Yes.
What do you take epistemology to be?
The study of knowledge.
The study of knowledge.
How to acquire knowledge, yeah. Justified true belief. What is a justified true belief? What do we know?
Have you heard of Jaakko Hintika's views about knowledge, justified belief?
Nope, I don't think so.
He doesn't think you need knowledge or beliefs.
What's his argument?
I mean, I would
Let's
agree
see
you
here.
don't need knowledge. Like, you can just have just beliefs and not care about knowledge. That's perfectly fine. It depends.
He's kind of
What's
rambling,
your definition of knowledge?
Justified true belief.
but I saw it in his book on Socratic, titled Socratic Epistemology. It was in his introduction.
No, there's an answer. Dumbest atheist on YouTube, Steve McRae. I got an answer for you, Godless Girl. There you go.
Oh, That's probably true. Yeah.
Why is he dumb? I don't think he's dumb. Actually, I think that he exposes a lot of atheists for doing the stupid.
I think
They try to avoid defending atheism, their position, by like being agnostic rather than atheist.
Atheist stuff. Yeah, Tom really hates him for that.
Oh, well, I hate him because he's a drama queen. Like he is the drama alert of the atheist community. All the stuff he talks about is just dumb. Like he doesn't actually talk about the arguments, focuses on purely pedantic nonsense and then people's personal lives, which is, I think, is really dumb.
I have a question for you, Godless. Are you a materialist or physicalist?
I think Godless is
No,
a
I
nihilist.
think that there's too many problems with. I think there's too many problems with physicalism, but I don't really grasp the other positions enough to defend them, so I kind of just don't have a position.
I have a question.
Sure.
Do you think that there's an objective reference to the meaning of language, or do you think that we just merely impose meaning to language?
I don't know what any of that means. An objective reference to the meaning of language? Like,
Have you ever met John?
Like, I'm not sure how you feel about objectivity. Maybe it's something you don't feel is even necessary.
like there's objective reality, and language describes reality.
But is language...
No, language isn't
Yeah.
objective. Language is an arbitrary thing we humans made up to describe reality.
So who, like, when it comes to definitions, like, if there's not any kind of like objective reference, then all of our language, is it just merely socially constructed? I mean, where do we find our validity?
Validity is a definitional thing. Validity is if the conclusion follows from the premises, which is also a definition that we made up. Definitions are completely arbitrary. It's a well-known thing in the philosophy of language known as the natural ambiguity of language. All
Right.
languages.
So one of the biggest issues would be that our sensory perception is clearly limited, right? So
Sure.
the world comes into us filtered through that sensory perception,
Yes.
if you will.
Yep.
Yeah, so what kind of implications do you think follows from something like that?
I have no idea what you mean. Like, our sensory perceptions don't give us knowledge of everything?
Well, I think the conclusions that some people come to is something like these notions of absolute truth are completely unattainable. We could never know what the world actually is like because clearly it's being filtered through our sensory perception. I mean, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, we can't have absolute certainty, but we can come to knowledge about it. So knowledge doesn't require absolute certainty. Firefitter, no, I haven't heard of Matt Dillahunty's
Just to
position.
clarify, how are you defining knowledge again?
Justified true belief.
So, in defining knowledge, you throw a word truth in there.
Right.
So what do you mean by truth?
That it corresponds to reality, so the sentence accurately corresponds
Okay,
to
so
reality.
when it comes to epistemology, you subscribe to the correspondence theory.
Partially yes, partially no, but that's irrelevant to my answer.
Well, I mean, I'd like to know what you mean when you say partially yes, because clearly, based off what we just said,
Like
I mean,
a
I don't
sentence,
understand
when I
what
say
you
a
mean by that.
sentence corresponds to reality, I mean, if I say that is a tree, essentially, then if that sentence accurately describes reality, then the sentence corresponds to reality. That's separate from the correspondence theory of truth, which is a different basis of justification. Correspondence, when you say a
Right,
sentence corresponds to reality, is just the sentence describes reality.
So when you say you kind of and kind of not,
That's irrelevant, so I'm not going to go into.
What does that mean? Like you're a pragmatist and you're picking
Nope,
and choosing?
I'm not
like
even
you
gonna-
like the correspondence theory a little bit, but you're going to throw most of it away? I mean, what does this mean?
No, I just told you what my basis was. I'm not going to do anything more
I mean,
than
so
that.
you would not describe yourself as a
I'm
pragmatist?
not going to describe myself as anything. I'm going to say exactly what I said. I believe in justified true belief is knowledge, and it's a truth is if a sentence describes reality. So I'm not going to subscribe to anything.
Truth doesn't have to be objective?
Yes, well, sort of. Not necessarily. You can have a subjective truth, like I like ice cream or something, but yes, truth about reality has to be objective.
But based off what I mentioned, how could you possibly reach any kind of objective conclusion about language or anything?
Truth is objective because it's ontological. It's about what exists. How we reach it epistemologically is a separate quality altogether. So whether or not we can have knowledge of ontology with absolute certainty is irrelevant. to whether or not it's true. So it's true regardless of whether or not we know it. Those are separate things.
Can truth contradict itself?
No.
Okay, so I'm just a little confused how you work up an epistemology and say things are true, or even have confidence in saying things are true, when you kind of acknowledge that the world comes to us filtered through our sensory perception. Therefore, as a entailment of that, we could never know what the world is actually like.
It's called,
I thought that's something you accepted, but I couldn't really say.
Yeah, it's called fallibilism. You don't need absolute certainty for knowledge. So if you have justification, then that is sufficient to get knowledge. You don't need absolute certainty.
But that seems just to be what Richard Rorty was saying in pragmatism, right? Richard was just saying, hey guys, we can't reach absolute truth, but pragmatism can tell you a whole lot about justification.
No, so
what truth is.
Pragmatism is a specific
That's exactly what Rorty was saying,
again,
right?
So stop. So again, there is epistemology of pragmatism, yes. That is not what fallibilism is. Fallibilism is the consensus of all philosophers, both theists and atheists.
So you just granted me that my description of pragmatism is correct. That is
a feature of pragmatism. That's a feature of pragmatism.
Something separate.
Stop. That's a feature of pragmatism. It is not. I'm supporting fallibilism.
Yes,
fallibilism.
It's a feature.
I'm going to mute you. You got last warning. So you described a feature of pragmatism. I'm not a pragmatist. I don't give a shit what pragmatism says. I'm a fallibilist. So could that one principle be shared among both of them? Yes, that's totally fine. But I'm a fallibilist like the majority of philosophers, not a pragmatist. So don't know why you bring it up.
Yeah, so to you, what does that mean? Why is that?
Fallibilism is the position that you can have.
Classify yourself as that.
Fallibilism is the position you can have knowledge without absolute certainty.
Yeah, that's Richard Rorty's position. He was called a neo-pragmatist.
No, that his position is more complicated, has lots more features than that. That's a single thing, a part of his ideology. It's also a part of many other people's ideology. It is a single feature of many different epistemologies. It isn't just all pragmatism. It's not like all fallibilism. It's not all pragmatism.
I'll never make the claim that that's all of pragmatism. In fact, that's why I said he's considered neo-pragmatist.
I don't care.
Right?
I don't care what he said. I'm not
well,
him.
I
don't agree with him.
You're describing what I'm saying
I don't care. I don't care what you're saying. I don't care what he said.
What are you doing here, bud?
I'm here to answer questions about my epistemology, not his. So if you want to go talk about his, go talk to him.
Care about whether or not he agrees with you.
I don't give a shit what he says. I don't care what he says at all. All I care about is what I say.
Continue telling us about your epistemology.
That's correct. This is about me, not him. So.
Yeah, you don't like the term pragmatist. You don't.
I don't care about him. I don't care about other people.
You're acting like I'm describing things incorrectly.
I don't care about him or his view. So.
Well, maybe one of the reasons Brett brought it up was maybe to get a better understanding of your epistemology, TJump, is to maybe compare it with the previous thinker's epistemology.
No, that would actually be false. So that would be a straw man. So the reason you don't do that is because if you make a comparison to someone else's epistemology, it has lots of other entailments that yours don't. You end up bringing up criticisms that have nothing to do with your epistemology because you compare it to the other one. So the best way to get an idea of someone's epistemology is just to ask them questions about their epistemology and not ever make comparisons to someone else's unless they specifically.
But in truth, many thinkers do respond to other thinkers.
Yep, but
especially
that's
to
optional. So I'm saying
mentors
I'm not going to
that they had learned from.
That's totally true.
Academic
stop.
advisors
I don't give a shit.
So
that's an option. I'm not doing it. So no.
Oh, okay. I was just pointing at that. Maybe that's what Brett was
we already know
to
that. So saying that doesn't help. So I'm saying don't compare me to other things. If you want to know about my epistemology, ask about mine. Do not compare me to other things because I'm tired of addressing.
Okay, listen. I'm just confused on how it is you think you've separated yourself from the pragmatist so successfully. Like most people,
I don't give a shit about the pragmatist. I'm not going to say anything about the pragmatist.
How do you approach the is-ought?
See, that's a legitimate question. See, there's a legitimate question. Don't say anything about pragmatists. Just say, how do you approach the is-ought? Fair question.
Pragmatists, in my opinion,
I don't give a shit about pragmatists.
You don't think that's even a problem, right?
I don't care. I don't care about anything. Anything you say about pragmatists, my answer is going to be no.
Shut up. You're not a pragmatist.
No, the answer is anytime you bring up pragmatism, I'm going to say, shut the fuck up. The only option.
Yeah, continue explaining to me how you're not a pragmatist for the third time.
All right, you're muted. Bye-bye. So, yeah, don't ever strawman my position. Don't compare me to other positions. If you want to know about mine, ask mine or shut the fuck up.
No one's strawmanning you.
So, Brenda, mute him. Get him out of here. I'm tired of this guy. Don't ever
You're having
compare
a
my
tantrum.
position.
I don't have any power in here. I have no
Calm
power.
down. Take a deep breath.
Godless girl. Sorry about that.
Does anyone else think I offended this guy or I'm being rude?
With you.
He asked you not to ask him about pragmatism, and you continue to ask him about pragmatism. So yes, you are being rude.
I asked the question before he
Godless
complained
girl.
about
Godless girl.
pragmatism,
Could you
right?
kick this guy out or mute him or something? I'm tired. I'm done with this guy.
They're not going to kick him out, but I got a question about pragmatism. What keeps
Don't
people
ask
Oh
from...
me.
no, he's gonna
No,
be.
no, no,
Don't.
No,
I'll mute
ask
you.
him out.
Relax.
No, but I just want to
Relax.
know, like, what? No, I have an interesting question. What keeps people from eventually engaging in like extremely immoral behavior if it's just like whatever works? Hello.
What
get
keeps
muted?
people? Keeps people doesn't.
Yeah, I
matter.
mean, eventually, if you're talking about pragmatism, it's like, well, if I, pragmatically, I can just, do these horrendous acts as long as the ends justify the means.
Yeah, I'm not a pragmatist, so I don't. Well,
Okay, I didn't know. I thought you were saying that you were sorry.
yeah, which is exactly why I told the dumbass to stop asking this such a stupid fucking question. Like, don't ever strawman me with that dumb shit. I'm tired of bringing up strawmen. Don't ever compare my position to some other dumbass position. No. Because that's exactly what happens is I get strawmanned. Oh, I thought you said you were a pragmatist. Like, no, I never fucking said that. This dumbass brought up pragmatism. I never did. Holy shit, I hate people who do that so much. It's such a waste of time. If you want to know about my position, ask me about my position. Don't compare me to other bullshit.
Okay, well, fair enough. I mean, are you an idealist, a materialist, physicalist?
Don't ask me about any of that shit. Ask me a specific question, not about how I compare to other isms.
No, are you an idealist?
No, I'm a materialist in that sense.
Wait,
But,
why
I
are you
mean-
why are you a materialist?
Because there's only evidence of material stuff, so we can conclude inductively.
But you can't
But
use
it's a
material.
metaphysical thesis, right? It's there's going to be a problem of
Nope,
underdetermination.
I'm a methodological materialist, so it's just about
Yeah,
we have
but you
evidence.
can't
of it.
use a material world to prove the material world, right?
No, you can use testable predictions though. I can say if I believe that there is material stuff, I can.
That
make testable
makes no
predictions.
sense.
But-
No, you're not getting it. You're still using the hand that
No,
kills
so that
things,
doesn't
the
work.
trunk.
So your ideology fails. Like no.
No, it doesn't.
Shut up and listen.
There's-
Shut up and listen. So
Well, you don't know what you're talking
I'm gonna
about.
mute you. Stop. So again, there's only like 2% of philosophers are idealists. No one gives a shit about idealism because it makes no testable predictions. Materialism does. We say we assume materialism is true. We make predictions. We get them right because we assume it's material and they happen to work. That's evidence of materialism. Is it proof? Nope. Doesn't need to be. It's inductive evidence. Sufficient.
Wait.
Why couldn't there be things that exist that just don't generate predictions?
There can be, but we have no reason to believe they're anything but imaginary.
Well, there could be indispensable, right? You can show. I mean, I don't know what you mean by evidence at that point. Then
So you have to show something. If you claim something is real, you have to demonstrate it's not just imaginary, something you've made up in your head. If you're saying it
All right,
exists,
look, dude, this is not your server. You can't mute me, all right, dude? I don't know. I don't even know who.
Godless, how do I mute? Right click on his name, then mute. Did it for you.
I already did, TJ.
Thank you. Oops.
yeah, okay. So what were you saying, TJump?
About what? What was the question?
Well, I was talking about there are things that we can posit that don't generate predictions.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So we need some way to differentiate imagination from reality. So if you have a hypothesis, I believe that there are souls or that there's some kind of non-physical mind or whatever. The two possibilities essentially are either it's just something you've made up in your head and you're wrong, or it is true that there are these souls that exist in reality independent of your imagination. So we need some kind of methodology to differentiate which one of these is it. The way that we accept doing that in science is novel testable predictions. You can say, if there is a soul, I can call my dead Uncle Bob and have him tell me the location of his buried treasure. And if I can get it right, then that would be good evidence that there is a non-material soul. But without some kind of methodology to differentiate, that can differentiate imagination from reality, then we have no reason to believe that your hypothesis is anything but imaginary. And so idealism, which is why idealism is rejected by the vast majority of philosophers, because it doesn't make any testable predictions to differentiate itself from just being imaginary, something that people made up, like unicorns or leprechauns.
You're going to have to clarify what you mean by imaginary, because do you mean imaginary is just whatever's mental?
Yes, essentially.
Well, my beliefs are mental, but they're not imaginary.
Yeah, I'm saying all conceptual things are imaginary. So beliefs, logic, math, ideas, language, everything that is in your head but doesn't exist independently of your head in reality.
Okay, TJ. Danny, you guys hijacked my conversation. I was actually talking to him, and you guys. I just want to ask him a few questions about. He said that like the vast amount of philosophers are not idealists. Actually, idealism is gaining a resurgence right now. I can name a number of philosophers who are very respectable, who are actually bringing I'm sorry, idealism back. You mean I can post their Wikipedia sites if you want.
So can I, but that isn't evidence. So the majority.
I do grant you, especially after I do grant you with the Bertrand Russell and analytical philosophy and Wittgenstein, there was a huge there was a war against metaphysics and idealism, but that's not the same. It's not like that anymore. Even analytical philosophy is starting to.
Phil Survey's paper results: external world idealism, skepticism, or non-skepticism. Accept or lean towards non-skeptical realism, 81%. Accept or lean towards idealism, 4%.
The consensus doesn't matter. Only one has to be correct, right? So let me give you like an example of one. Bernardo Kastrup, right now he's a very credible philosopher.
I've had him on my show. I've talked with him before. I know that there are idealists, and I know their arguments.
So what do you think about Bernardo?
That I think his arguments are nonsense and wrong. They're composite. Composite and...
So TJump, bro, quick question, TJump, I have for you. Really
composition
quick,
and division fallacy. That's it. What's your question?
TJump, quick question there, TJump. So the Da Vinci created and he drew out, because he had an idea of what it would be like for a satellite. I'm not sure if he explained it as the word satellite, but he did draw things in a satellite looking down on Earth. This man had this idea in his brain as an imagination, and he put it on paper. As he put it on paper and people saw it, they're like, oh, well, this is a great imagination for you to have. But then at the same time, later on, he actually was trying to explain his imagination and in his brain on what a landscape would look like looking down from a bird's eye view. Now, this man was so ahead of his time.
What's the question?
So the question here is, he did have an imagination. He didn't physically show you. He couldn't physically show you what a satellite can do, but he drew these pictures way ahead of his time, showing the world that looking down in a bird's eye view of the planet, it would look like this.
Yeah, it's called a map. Those existed before Da Vinci.
That was just a waste of 5 minutes. Another question. You had your chance.
I asked T-Jump a question, and that didn't lead to the question.
Well, I was talking to him first, and you guys interrupted my conversation with him, right? I was talking to him first.
Drawing a picture is not a novel prediction.
All right. So another. What about like people like Stephen Hawkins, who they're not even physicalists? There would be what you would call mind-dependent realists, right?
No, I think Stephen Hawkins is a physicalist.
What's that?
I'm pretty sure Stephen Hawkins was a physicalist.
No, he's a mind-dependent realist.
I doubt it. But maybe.
What are you talking about?
So what's your question?
I have his book, The Grand Design, and they you can just look it up. I can post it right now. They are mind-dependent realists. That means that they don't believe that the world exists the way that we see the world, and that basically we just formulate these laws based on our senses, and it could be completely different than what we think it is, right? Or it may not even exist. It could still be, because the way that I understand the Grand Design, it seems like he's making arguments, at least for, if maybe not idealism, at least for transcendental idealism.
No, he's a
idealism. No, he's not. He's a mind-dependent realist. I'll post it. 1 second.
Mind-dependent realism means that your mind exists. Like you're talking about consciousness collapse. That's all physicalism. That's all materialism. In quantum mechanics, that's all physical stuff. Like quantum information is a kind of physical information. He's still a materialist.
No.
When I'm having a hard time understanding, so you want to distinguish what imaginary and what? Reality?
So like I imagine unicorns, but they don't exist in reality, independent of my imagination. So,
right. So if that's a true dichotomy, then whatever is not in reality is just not real, right?
Yes.
Okay, but you said that so the imaginary is mental.
So
right?
Listen to it again. So either it's something, an idea in your head, or it exists in reality independent of your head. That's the dichotomy. In your head.
What about beliefs?
That's in your head.
So those are not real? My beliefs are not real?
Listen again. Either there are things in your head or there are things independent of your head.
But you accepted that which was not part of reality was not real.
I've already answered this many times. You got to listen to it again. Listen carefully. Things are real if they exist independent of your imagination. That's what I'm using real to mean. So if it exists in your head, obviously the ideas are real, but the thing the ideas are referring to, like a unicorn, isn't real. The idea of a unicorn is real. The unicorn is not real. So by real, I mean a thing independent of just your imagination. Obviously your imagination is real. I totally grant that. But if the thing you're imagining does not exist independent of your imagination, then it's imaginary. Your imagination is real. I grant you. Yes.
So when I'm positing your existence, I'm positing your imagination, your thoughts and beliefs and desires and whatever. Are those not? Are those part of the world?
Your idea of me is just an idea in your head, and then there is also a fact.
So
that
you don't exist in reality.
No, I do exist in reality, but your idea.
So it's out. Is that dependent on my imagination?
Stop. Your imagination. You have an idea of me. Your idea of me is just your idea. And then there is also a me that exists independent of your idea of me. So you have ideas that exist in your head, and then there's a thing that exists independent of your imagination in reality, and that's real. That would be me. Unicorns don't have that. Unicorns just have the idea in your head. It's pretty easy to understand this. Like, if you don't, you got to be pretty dumb.
It's easy in the case of a unicorn, but if the proposition TJump exists, right? That existence is either going to be, according to you, real, the real kind of existence, or the one that's just merely in my head. But I would think that TJump is out in the world, out in reality. You do exist.
Yeah,
right?
I've already answered this.
Independent from my imagination.
No, I've already answered this. I've already answered this. Imagination is real. Yes, I have an imagination. My imagination is real and a part of reality. Definitely.
Wait, I thought you distinguished imaginary and reality.
It has to exist out in reality, independent of your imagination. So again, this is super simple distinction. If you don't get it, you just got your head up your ass. Like, yes, obviously people exist.
Is your existence dependent on my imagination? Yes or no?
I'm a material thing with a brain and neurons.
I have a related question. I think that.
But then your existence depending on you, so under your view, you would be imaginary.
Wrong. Brains exist independent of my imagination too. My brain exists without my imagination. I exist perfectly independently of my imagination. When I'm sleeping, I still exist. Oh my God, magic.
Object.
But the confusing thing is that the proposition I exist, according to you, would depend on my very being.
No,
right?
It doesn't. It's stupid.
It doesn't depend on.
I just proved that wrong. I exist when I'm sleeping.
Depend on my thoughts?
I exist when I'm sleeping. So when I'm sleeping, I have no thoughts. I still exist. I have a brain. I'm a physical brain.
Well, that means that you're. Well, in what sense do you exist?
I'm a physical brain. Like, stupid.
Well, why do you don't distinguish the mind and the brain?
No, I accept the consensus of neurology and psychology and cognitive science. That
It's a philosophical question, not a neurological question.
Right?
Does he believe in epiphenomenism? Is that what it is?
Which is exactly why I accept the consensus in cognitive science and philosophy and neuroscience and every field related to the brain, which is
well, that's going to be a very poor argument against a dualist. You're not seriously going to propose that argument against a dualist.
Well, I'd say
the consensus is, therefore it is.
No, the consensus is a valid form of evidence, which is totally fine. So I don't.
Well, I'm not accepting.
I don't care what you accept.
If I don't accept the authority of neurologists, then what kind of argument do you have against me?
Then you're an idiot. Like if you don't accept the authority.
Wait, what do you mean by idiot in that case? Just because I don't accept your authority?
Yeah, if you don't accept.
What if you don't accept my authority? Does that make you an idiot?
Yeah, if you don't accept the authority of the experts in the field who've devoted their lives to it and published papers on it, then you're an idiot. Like.
Yeah, I don't know what you mean by idiot, right? It seems like it just means that I don't accept your authorities.
I don't care. No,
right?
don't accept.
Does that make you an idiot if you don't accept my authorities?
If you don't accept the authorities who will give degrees and who publish papers on it, and who research it in the field, who are actual authorities, like you're an idiot. Like. Go to your doctor and tell your doctor.
If there's some consensus that I present to you that have a set of degrees, right? If you don't accept it, right, then that makes you an idiot.
Yes, like if you had a
the consensus that was Kant was right before hypergeometry. So was everyone an idiot then?
Yeah, it seems like atheists were idiots back in the day, but the consensus changed in philosophy, so they just suddenly did not become idiots.
No,
that's
the consensus in the past was based on religious dogma, not on actual evidence. Now it's based on.
No, there were
evidence.
many philosophers that were not, religiously affiliated. Like take the Kant identified as a theist, but he wasn't like. By all means, like a Christian, like I don't think he
the consensus is valid evidence. If you want to disagree with that, you can take it up with science. I don't give a shit what your opinion is.
The point is that it's so silly to say that if the consensus changes, your status as an idiot changes.
Nope, it's perfectly fine. Like the consensus was before Einstein that time
So
and
if the
space couldn't
consensus
bend.
changed, right, you would just be an
Shut
idiot.
up, shut up. No, if the consensus changed, I'd change with the consensus.
You're so dogmatic, man.
Gee, you have to
So,
give them a chance to
the
respond.
consensus of physics was that time and space couldn't bend. They weren't physical objects. Then Einstein published a paper and made testable predictions. And the
So
consensus
Einstein was an
changed.
idiot
Shut
when
up,
the
shut up,
consensus physicist.
Shut up. So after he published a paper, he convinced the consensus. That's how it works. The consensus is changed by people publishing papers, which the consensus can look at and say, oh, look, we learned something new. The consensus is the most reliable source of evidence we have. It's better than everything else. Does it change? Yes, that's perfectly fine. You're still an idiot if you reject it. It is the most reliable source of data we have. I don't care what your opinion is on it. If you want to deny that the consensus is real, tell that to your doctor. Tell that to the engineers who build planes and cars. Take it up with them. Oh, could they be wrong? Sure, but they sure make stuff that works, don't they?
Yeah, no, but then Einstein, by that measure, Einstein was an idiot because he didn't agree with the consensus physicist.
No, he actually did. He published a paper saying, this is my weaker position. I'm trying to convince the consensus.
Right before Einstein was Newtonian physics, like the accepted form of. I mean, I'm not a physicist.
So
nor are you,
every
right?
scientist, what they do is they publish a paper to try and convince the consensus. They recognize.
Did he go against the consensus before he came up with his theory?
Shut up. So what scientists do is they publish papers to convince the consensus. They recognize they are going against the consensus and saying, I have a weaker position because it's not accepted by the consensus, and we need some people to verify this to convince the consensus. That's the point of papers. Explaining to you basic science is just boring as shit. So if you don't understand the consensus, Google it. Don't waste my time. It's just basic science.
You said earlier that if I went against the consensus, I would be an idiot.
Yep.
But there are cases in which very intelligent people like Einstein
they didn't
went
go
against the consensus, changed the consensus. Excuse me, you're interrupting me.
I'm gonna shut you up. Shut you up every time.
The point is that then you have a further criteria. It's not just a matter of consensus, right? Einstein went against the consensus. He's not an idiot. So what is it that I'm doing other than not going against the consensus that makes me an idiot?
All right, done with this dumbass topic. No, consensus. Einstein did not go against the consensus. He said he acknowledged that his position was weaker. If you think your position is better than the consensus, you're an idiot. If you acknowledge the consensus is better than you and you're trying to change it, that's perfectly fine. Einstein was fine. Science is fine. You're the idiot. Next question.
You guys have been trying, like,
I
talking about
muted
the
him. We're
validity
done
of
with the
bringing up.
consensus.
You guys have been talking about the validity of bringing up like a consensus.
I'm not done.
Curious
Then
what the
I
consensus
can't
is.
be an idiot just in virtue.
You're done.
What's the consensus about?
The consensus is you of the experts who have assessed the evidence and looked at it and come to a conclusion on.
But the thing about it is you act like these problems.
Shut up, dude.
Yeah, go ahead.
Stop being so vague. I'm asking a specific question. What's the consensus of? Like you said these issues, stuff like that. Like I'm asking, like what is widely agreed on.
Specifically, that idealism is wrong and that realism is true.
But it can't simply be the fact that you go against a consensus.
How can I permanently mute this kid or just kick him out? Because
yeah, that's such a tired point. I don't think there's a consensus for that, dude. Because it's like scientists don't take it really.
So I just pulled it up. Phil Survey's paper. Wait, stop. So Phil Survey's paper results. Do a Google search. Go down to idealism. You can do a Control F search. It's 4%. So yeah, there is as much of a consensus that idealism is wrong as there is that.
But in this situation, if you have a consensus, all you need is one to be wrong. You can have a 99% consensus that global warming is true, and one could be wrong. That's all you need.
Until you present evidence, the consensus is right.
The consensus doesn't mean anything.
The consensus, you're an idiot. Go tell it to your doctor.
My issue is that like I don't disagree that most people think idealism is false, or most philosophers or academic philosophers or whatever. But I don't think it's a popular position to talk about the reality of objects necessarily, like saying like I really exist, like because you aren't really something that is like a fundamental physical entity. It's like a much vaguer definition, and that seems to require minds to bring it. So how can you exist without a mind to conceive of you, given that there's no fundamental boundaries that establish demarcations in reality?
You're confusing epistemology and ontology. So I am a brain. That's my ontology. I'm purely physical. Our epistemological definition of that and where we can prove it with absolute certainty is irrelevant. It's based on inductive evidence, based on novel testable predictions that indicates we're purely physical beings. So whether we can prove it with certainty doesn't make a difference. But the ontology is
no, but it takes a greater leap of faith to believe in physicalism versus idealism. It takes much more of a greater leap in faith because you have to.
There's no faith.
You have to be sure.
There's no faith. So
it is faith. You have to faith. When I look at a stick and it's bent in water, and I'm tricked by my senses and think that it's actually bent, but it's actually straight. Our senses fool us all the time.
So again,
we didn't know there were
there's no faith
X-rays.
here. There's
We
no
didn't know
faith
there were
here at all.
X-rays, and now
Again,
there's X-rays, right?
Stop. So again, there's no faith here at all. It's based on evidence. We have you take two hypotheses, like if you see a cup fall over, what caused the cup to fall over? Maybe it was caused by the wind, maybe it was caused by a squirrel, maybe it was caused by invisible aliens. The one that is the most supported is the one that can say, if it's caused by a squirrel, then we can look around the cup and find squirrels.
No, but the problem.
Stop. So if we look at the cup and we see squirrel droppings, that's evidence of the squirrel. Now, could it be the other things? Yes, doesn't matter. The other things don't have evidence. The squirrel now has evidence because it made successful testable predictions. Physicalism makes successful testable predictions. That's why 90% of everyone in every scientific field is a physicalist. That is, the brain and the mind are synonymous. There is no idealism. Idealism is 4% because it's a joke position that isn't supported by any evidence, that makes no testable predictions. All of the arguments are just garbage. It doesn't work.
Can you provide any evidence for physicalism?
I just did. Novel testable predictions.
Not supported for idealism?
Yes, novel testable predictions. So anything that is a novel testable prediction, I can say, if physicalism is true, I can predict the cosmic microwave background or whatever. And if we discover it after we made the prediction, that's evidence of physicalism. That is not evidence of idealism, because idealism did not make a novel testable prediction. So what's evidence is novel testable predictions. Until idealism can say, if idealism is true, here is a testable prediction we can do that we predict under idealism, then it's not evidence of idealism.
But that doesn't contradict idealism.
It doesn't need to contradict idealism. It never said anything about contradiction. It needs to be a novel testable prediction. Unless you can say, I have a hypothesis, and if my hypothesis is true, it doesn't need to be, nothing is exclusive. Stop. The problem of underdetermination in science is all evidence that we ever discover post hoc can always be explained by infinitely many theories. The one that is the best, the one that's supported, is the one that can predict it before we know it. It's called a prediction. If you can make no predictions, your theory is garbage. If you can make predictions, your theory is accepted. The fact that you can post-diction everything and try and make it fit your theory isn't evidence of anything. Everyone can do that. That's what creationists do when they try to say the Earth was created 6,000 years ago. Anyone can make post hoc, make the evidence fit their hypothesis. That isn't evidence. The only one that has evidence is the one that can make predictions. So if you can't make predictions, your theory is garbage, which is why idealism isn't accepted by anybody in academia. Any other questions?
Yeah. You said you got excited earlier in some sense when I brought up the is-ought. Like, oh yeah, that's a good question, you know?
Yeah, that's a legitimate question. So like if you're asking me how do I address the is-ought question, I would say that there are no oughts. I say oughts are come after the fact. In order to know what objective morality is, you need to say, this is objective morality. Here's like some principle or something. And then you can, from that, you can say, if I want to be moral, I ought to abide by this principle. Or if I want to be immoral, I ought to not abide by this principle. So I get rid of the oughts. It's called moral naturalism. You can, Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, moral naturalism.
So right. I'm sorry. Let me finish. John, please. I don't know why I was muted. We were actually having. I think you and I, J-Chump, I think we were having like a good discussion. I was trying to continue with the leap of faith that materialism has to do, right?
No,
and you
there's
were
no
saying
leap
that
of
it doesn't
faith.
take a leap.
There's no leap of faith.
But it seems like you're conflating science with philosophy. Philosophy is always going to be speculative, right? It has to be. That's just the nature of philosophy.
So science is never certain. It's always inductive. It's never gives proof of anything. It's always a probabilistic thing. It's never certain. I don't know what you're even talking about.
What's not? Oh no, if you're talking about science. Oh, well, if you're talking about, I mean, look, I'm just simply saying that if you're going to say, well, if you're like, just for example, causality, right? That presupposes that causality exists in the so-called phenomenal world or the real world or whatever. I mean, there's good reason to believe that there's good reason to believe that there's a causal law in the way that our brain operates.
Stop. So there's no law of cause and effect. That isn't a thing. Hume showed that you can doubt all cause and effect and still get everything in reality too. There is no such thing as a law of cause and effect. So that's not something.
Yeah, but Kant and Schopenhauer showed that the causality was a function of the brain and not a function of the phenomenal world, right?
No, that's dumb.
It's not.
You don't think you don't think that's true? I can show you Mainlander's critique of Schopenhauer on that.
I don't
Schopenhauer,
care. Go publish a paper on it.
If you could like provide. Did you just say that? Did you just say that cause and effect is not a law? So wouldn't it be a function?
No. The brain has a causal our brain has developed to perceive the world as operating causally, right?
I'd agree with that. Yeah. Why wouldn't you agree with that? I'm curious.
Cause and effect, like the fact that things interact in reality is not a product of the brain. So what you colloquially refer to as cause and effect is not a problem in the brain.
I'd say that cause and effect isn't real. That cause and effect is an impression that's like a psychological.
Right. The labels are a
attribute
product of the brain.
significance to
Sure.
something.
The labels are a product of the brain, but the thing he's referring to as cause and effect, the fact that there is change in the world from matter to energy, that is not a product of the brain, which is what he was referring to, not just the labels.
Is that what he was referring to?
I think I don't think he's necessarily going for that angle, because like I'm kind of sympathetic to their points, even though I'm not idealist in any stretch of the imagination. I definitely lean on the physicalist side, but there is a certain aspect of reality where it's like you say that you are a brain, but really I don't think there are objects at all until there are minds to conceive objects, because reality without minds to conceive them is kind of undifferentiated.
Yeah, the chair, the chair that you see is
Stop. So that's the problem of identity. That's an epistemological, not an ontological one. Objects exist just fine without minds. It's just we label them in certain ways. So you're confusing the epistemic.
So no, that's actually, well, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. But like to say that they're objects, but then that we just label them, even though they are still like ontologically, like objectively existing objects, assumes that they exist in their own unique, disparate sense. So to assume that the apple is not, like in some monist perspective, something that is ontologically sort of consistent and fluid with the rest of all the matter that exists is sort of interesting to consider from a point that isn't something that is from a subjectively conscious mind.
Yeah, again, you're confusing the labels, the map for the territory fallacy. Just Google that. No.
What? So what did you say?
You're confusing the labels. You're saying, oh, well, we make up the label of apple, therefore apples don't exist. No, the object exists just fine. The fact that we don't have a concrete definition of where apple ends and air begins doesn't make a difference.
Yeah,
No.
really. I was going to ask you, do you believe in forms?
No.
Because that's what it sounds like.
Nope, I'm a physicalist just like pretty much everyone in philosophy and science.
Well, you said like, you seem to be really fond of the scientific worldview, but in my opinion, the scientific worldview doesn't make room for objects because it's fundamental forces interacting, and there's no boundary between any part of that where one object then stops being and another object starts being. There's none of that in there.
You can take that up with the scientists. Good luck.
I don't think scientists make the claim that objects are ontologically real. You know.
Well, you might want to ask them because they do.
No.
Okay.
But they have to have some type of foundation to base their like. They had to have some type of foundational like.
No, they don't. They just have to say, "Here's a rock." That's
narrative to be able to base any type of.
Nope, they don't. They just
theory
have to,
off of it,
nope,
though.
No, they don't. They just have to say, "Here's a rock." Shut up. That's all they have to say.
Is that how they qualify it?
Many scientists, yeah, like they don't really give a shit about all this philosophical jargon because it's irrelevant to what they do. So they're like, "Here's a rock. This rock exists. If you disagree, I don't really care about your opinion."
Well, why do you think it's useful to engage in philosophy if you're just strictly worried about empirics? What the fuck?
Because philosophy is useful.
That's
for
a
lots
tall
of things.
accusation you have there about scientists.
Don't know what
It
you're talking
depends
about.
on the scientist, right?
Sure.
Exactly. It's like it depends on any other individual and how they deem the importance of their study.
TJump, would you agree that scientists value practical explanations over theoretical ones, for example? I think that's what you were just alluding to, right?
Sure.
When you said the scientists don't care about the
Yes.
philosophy babble, for example,
Yes.
right?
They prefer testable predictions over theoretical predictions. Yes.
Yeah, and that's what you do. That's what you value in your epistemology as well.
Yes. When it comes to things existing in the external world, yes.
Right. So why are pragmatists idiots?
I didn't say pragmatist where it is.
Okay, don't listen to him.
So-
He's just a fucking troll.
Yeah.
I still want to just talk about like the scientific consensus about ontology.
Why do you
because
think
I
I'm a
honestly
troll?
I don't hear it.
Because
Let
you're
him answer.
stupid,
Let him
that's
answer
why.
that. I'm not a troll. I'm being
Muted.
sincere.
No.
Well, that's
We're
even
not- we're not
worse.
gonna talk about
John's
pragmatism.
never trolling. But seriously though, like the only whispers of like ontology that I hear about in science seems to be like psychology when people try to explain how people come to ontologies, and they'll kind of explain that in by doing research on people's behavior or scanning their brains or something like that.
There's tons of.
But
There's,
I don't hear physicists talking about ontology like this. I do hear psychologists talking about it, and honestly, it's very popular in psychology right now to say that
stop. So again, you can just go to the polls of all the different scientific fields. They're all materialist physicalists. They all accept.
I don't dispute that.
So yeah, they don't actually publish on it because ontology isn't a part of the methodology of science, so it doesn't really care. But they are materialists.
Right. I wouldn't dispute materialism versus idealism because I think I myself would call myself a physicalist, but I'm more getting at the fact that you say things like I am a brain, and like even without a mind, I am a brain, and I don't think that makes any sense because I don't think brains exist except for in minds. I don't think any objects exist except for in minds.
Good luck with that. You can take it up with cognitive scientists. Julian Mussolini.
It depends on what type of idealism you subscribe to.
Who really?
I mean, like I could just like refer to like Thomas Metzinger, who is.
That's fine. Like, I'm not interested in debating you. If you want to take that niche position, you can do it. I don't care. Knock yourself out.
You have like a central nervous system, a nucleus, and a membrane, right? Physically, but then psychologically, what you experience inside the mind, what you study, is the mind. Do you understand? That's the difference.
Yeah, the mind and the brain are the same thing.
I feel like you're in a backwards hat right now.
No, because like the mind is the essence of what you cannot see, what was not actually physically there.
But it is physical, right? Like
your brain, the motor functions of what's inside of the membrane, what's inside the nucleus, what runs everything in there as far as your emotions and as far as us as a social constructed species on the planet.
Cognition is amenable to physical sciences. Anything that like
he's talking about qualia experience. He just doesn't know the words for it.
I don't think he was because like people say mind and they usually throw in stuff like kind of like your personality and stuff like that. They're not really just, and almost they're never talking about like just experience. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, that's because they're not familiar with
the mind is the cogs, dog. That's what has the running things like your neurotransmitters.
So just pause for a minute. So I'm going to quote Dr. Julian Mussolino, who's a cognitive scientist, which is the philosophy and science field. It's in fact, the overwhelming majority of people in my line of work is what's called a materialist or physicalists. There's a number of lines of reasoning that all converge on the same conclusion. That's what philosophers of science call consilience of evidence. That's what supports strong conclusions like evolution, climate change. So in the case of evolution, you have a fossil record and molecular biology, comparative autonomy. All of these things point in the same direction. Likewise for a soul. As far as scientists are concerned, neuroscientists, psychologists, cognitive scientists, there is almost no support for dualism. Philip Goff, a philosopher, has made a brave foray into panpsychism, but it's ridiculed in most quarters. I think he's a chess player who refuses to concede even when he's down to a lone king and a pawn against several powerful pieces. Are you really going
why is he shitting on panpsychism?
Because panpsychism is stupid.
It's not stupid. It's the only answer. It's the only answer to the hard problem of consciousness that it isn't ridiculous and it actually fits into a scientific.
Nope.
It's the closest based thing that we have, but it's a loose basis.
It is a loose basis. I compare it to like ancient atomists when they're just like everything's made out of atoms, and then you can ask a million ways like how does that work?
Good luck with that.
Well, it is that. It's a response to the hard problem of consciousness and a response to dualism, and dualism's stupid. Okay, panpsychism is perfectly consistent with the kinds of assumptions that you make in scientific worldview in general.
But it's just like a loose basis. It's like a rickety bridge. Like at any moment, that could be just completely debunked and replaced with something completely different because it's so loosely based. Though that's why nobody kind of tends to want to look at it as something serious or not until it has more.
I don't think it'll ever be debunked because I think it's just generally true. I think it's kind of like saying like atomism will be debunked, and yeah, atomism was debunked, but it's a little bit more complicated than that. There's like a deeper level, whatever. But still, the general idea I think is always going to remain true.
Couldn't you say that the mind is an emergent property of matter that requires specific structures in order to exist?
I wouldn't say that because the qualities of experience seem to be fundamental, and they don't seem to be related to a combination of things.
How can you show that a rock has an experience other than erosion?
Well, I mean, I could lay out like kind of like a path to achieve that, but it would be involved. It might be impossible, but like a path to
Would it
achieve
be
that.
like an
Yeah, you can only
evolutionary
get to
path?
behaviorism.
Would it not just always have existed? Because if it has not existed before, then how does it actually not have any friction with what you said before?
What's that?
How would you not have a clear path to how mind exists right now with your current understanding if you're just trying to lay out the roadmap for how mind will exist in the future? How does that even make sense?
No, I said I'm not so I could lay out a way that it would be plausible that we could explain what a rock is conscious of, but I'm not sure that it's actually possible to achieve that.
As far as we know, anything that doesn't have a sentience doesn't have any type of function of like, ability. It doesn't have any type of sense of being other than what it is. It's just an object. It's not a sentient being at that point because it has to.
But conceivably, the experience in a rock would just be like static and not coherent. It wouldn't be like a well orchestrated picture. It would just be kind of nonsense.
So you're talking about like a lobotomized patient?
No, because lobotomized people are like sentient.
Yeah, exactly. So like, what's his consciousness? Is it like a hypothetical?
Well, yeah, because you can't embody a rock, right? So you actually wouldn't be able to relate to it. However,
what are we doing?
Down there.
What are we doing, guys? Let's get TJump back into this shit. Come on.
What? I fell asleep.
the way that you could possibly try
Nobody
to have
cares
insight
about
of what the
panpsychism.
consciousness of a rock is. Well, I mean, people did ask about it.
Oh, it's kind of
What
like
were you
strapping a
saying
GoPro to your dog while you're not at home and seeing what your dog does throughout the day type deal.
No.
No.
So listen. People have experiences and they talk about their experiences and they communicate them to us, and we can reasonably assume that those experiences are similar to the ones that we have ourselves. So if someone says that
So
I'm
join
seeing the
another
color red,
channel. Do this seminar together.
Hey,
Oh,
TJump,
yeah,
I got a question.
Sure, what's your question?
Okay, go ahead.
all right, fuck it. Be retarded.
Okay.
Y'all win.
Well, I'm just saying, like, yeah, that's of course true. I mean, as individuals, as we are as a human species in particular, as far as what we know of ourselves, is that I could talk about an experience that I had. We could both have experienced it together, but no matter how much.
All right, sorry, I muted you. Let's move on from idealism.
right.
What's your question?
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, TJump. All right. I'm interested in some specific principle or definition from your epistemology.
About what? About what? Definition of what?
So you said you were planning on writing a book.
Yes. Epistemology is
Okay,
the
so-
study of knowledge. How do we get knowledge? What specifically you're looking for? What definition? Definition of knowledge? Definition of how to get knowledge? What is it justify
Yeah,
belief?
let's just right. So let's start with what is true?
What is true or what is truth?
Right. So what is truth?
Truth is that which corresponds to reality.
Okay.
Does that mean that it's true that you're a cuck?
So
Uh,
if
huh.
if truth is what corresponds to reality, I'm taking what corresponds to reality being propositions.
Correct. So truth is a property of sentences, and if sentences correspond to reality.
Right. Right. Okay. So if it's propositions that are corresponding to reality.
Is there a question coming sometime?
Well, I was in the process of asking.
Hurry up, please.
Oh, are we going somewhere?
Yeah, last chance.
In a hurry?
Hurry up, or I'm going to move on.
You can move on if you want.
Okay, moving on. Next question.
Yeah, I've got a question. How comes when I asked you about the Holocaust, you just appeal to the authority of the experts instead of actually addressing the question? I'm curious as to why you did that.
Because I haven't researched the Holocaust. Like, I have no interest in researching it. It's just like researching that the world is round. I have no interest in researching it. So I'm just going to, the experts are fine. They're perfectly good evidence.
Okay, so you just appeal to experts when you don't know a thing instead of just saying you don't know?
Yes, because that's evidence. So I have evidence, which is the experts.
The opinions of experts classified as evidence now?
That's correct. That's because appeal to authority fallacy is it's only a fallacy if they're not actual experts. If they're actual experts, then it's actual evidence.
I mean, no, it's still an opinion though. Like if I say like this,
So okay,
well,
but we can just Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy fallacies number 9. Go. Have fun.
right. So I have a question. If I was to go ahead and say that Kim Jong Un said X, therefore X is true, that would be an appeal to authority. It's appealing to the authority of the supreme leader, correct?
False authority. So that would be a fallacy because he's a false authority.
How is it? Wait, what makes a false authority and what makes a true authority?
Google Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy fallacies number 9. Go for it.
He's asking you.
I don't care. If you want a basic primer on 101 philosophy terms, Google it.
TJump, why would anyone be interested in reading your book if this is the way you're going to interact with people?
Well, yeah. Also, as well, the last time I
subjective
talked to this guy, he just said that's a stupid question, and he didn't actually answer the question. He just said those are stupid questions and just dismissed them.
Yep, I have no interest in debating just basic terms like what an authority is. Like Google it. And go away.
No. The last time I talked to you, it wasn't about this. Well, it was about this, but that was the last bit. I'm talking about the bit where I said, what is your opinion on racism defined as X? And you just said, that's a bad definition. That's a stupid question. You didn't address it.
No, I said it wasn't mine. So I used this definition and you use a different definition. So that would be stupid. It would be a straw man to use that definition. Your definition was dumb.
Do we have an official definition that we could use?
It's not a straw man. It's literally, if we define racism as, racial discrimination based on, race
definition
in of itself in any circumstance, then is that good or bad? And you just said, that's a bad definition. I'm not using that. That's a stupid question. I know you said that because you literally recorded yourself saying that in the stream.
Yes, and I'm saying it again right now. That's a stupid definition.
What makes it stupid in your opinion?
It's not useful in the terminology. What we mean by the term, it's not useful.
Useful to who?
To me.
I was about to say that.
To me.
Okay, so you just declare things stupid if they're not useful to you based on your own subjective values?
Yep, happy to do that. Stupid definition.
Sounds like a pragmatist.
All right, I just posted the official definition of racism. Since it doesn't work for you, there's multiple definitions there.
He just Googled the
dictionary.
Definition. It's perfectly fine.
God damn it.
Prejudice.
I could get one from Oxford's too if you mess over so need it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Anybody else got any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah, I had a question.
What does it mean to
want to hear it?
So maybe this is a question he will want to hear. So what does it mean to progress morally speaking? That, what does it mean to progress morally?
To move towards a world with less involuntary imposition of will.
Okay, so I guess that assumes the idea that basically a world without any sort of imposition upon will is the perfectly moral world.
No, that's the conclusion based off of the evidence. So that's the principle I've come to based off of the evidence of moral intuition, moral progress. And if I'm right, then that would be the correct answer.
So are you saying that morals are empiric?
I'm saying we have evidence, we have empirical evidence of certain things that we call morals, moral intuition, moral progress. There are several different explanations of what those are. Mine is that it's objective, and then I use those two principles, try to describe the commonalities between them, and I create a principle, and then based off that principle, I make predictions, and if those predictions are correct, then that would be good evidence of my hypothesis being true.
So, didn't really answer the question. Are morals empiric?
Well, are morals truth apt? Like, if I say stealing is wrong, can you actually say it's
I'm
true or
not.
false?
I'm a moral realist, not a moral error theorist. So yes, morals are truth apt. Moral propositions.
So, what system do you use to say whether something is true or false morally?
The one I wrote.
What's that? Can you explain it?
In any involuntary imposition of will is bad. That's the short version. You can.
So wait, how do you come to this conclusion? How do you ground your moral philosophy? What do you use postulates or?
I look at moral intuition and moral progress. I say these are the evidence we have of morality, and I say, well, what explains these? I think it can be explained by an objective feature, like in a higher order emergent property, like fitness. Like fitness is an objective property in the world. It's how certain creatures can survive in certain environments, and that's mind independent. And there's a similar kind of higher order emergent property, which is what I call morality. And that instead of describing
Western moral progress,
what
is this Western moral progress or
Moral progress is the
Whoa.
phenomenon that we see that we're explaining. It's not the proof of morality. It's the phenomenon. So, and it would apply to all civilizations, not just Western moral progress.
Well,
If you want to look at Western world progress, I mean, that's a good idea of how morals construct can be built over a sense of time and over a sense of knowledge being gained over us as a humanitarian prospect. You know, you look at it, you go from Portugal, Spain, and England and Italy. All trying to come over to the New World, right? We're talking about rape, pillaging. We're talking about taking over from indigenous species. We're talking about all this to the point to where Central America and South America has wiped out most of their culture, and it has been replaced with a mixed culture of both, right? But what have we learned from it?
Next question.
Holy
How do you
shit.
classify moral progress and moral regress?
I just steal the definition from moral realism and philosophy and describe that.
From
Yes,
what philosophy? Like what philosophy then? Like what book? Like do you have the
Well,
definition with you?
No. Just Google moral progress, Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy.
What
I don't
does the
have-
T stand for in TJump?
It's my name.
Trash. But see, like you keep like telling people to Google things and
Yes.
things are stupid.
Yes, because just the definition of moral progress is not in any way contingent on my model, so you can just Google it. It's the same as if you want a dictionary definition, just use the dictionary definition.
When I Google it, I get like millions of definitions. Which one's the right one to use?
Any of them are perfectly fine. Go for it.
So if I just said moral progress,
no idea what he's talking
So if you want to just Google, like if you want to just dictionary definition terms, go Google the dictionary definitions. I don't need to define every single term. It's a waste of my time.
multiply the millions.
Then we can define them for you. Is that what you're saying?
Hold on. I want to talk to Chijo for a second.
I think he's actually given us the go ahead, the green light to actually define things.
Is that Towan
Come on, one person at a time.
What's Towan Bucks is doing here?
Dude, I want to carry on with TJump. Okay, so if I was to go ahead and say that moral progress is then when we make lynching niggers legal, that would be a definition that's perfectly fine because I can probably make a website and find it in that list.
Good luck with that. Go away.
I mean, no, I can't make a website and I
Good
can't
luck
find
with
it in that list. if
Go
I want.
away.
You're not actually
Muted. Next question.
Are you an anti-natalist?
No, I think that it is not immoral to have children. I think that
Anti-analyst.
What?
Hey, T-Jump, are you an idiot?
Who is that? Can we mute him too? Next question.
I have a question.
Sure.
So if thoughts and emotions are physical, right, they have to share all properties of things that are material, right, or physical. So, for
No.
instance, if I have an emotion, like say I'm angry, right, and it possesses intention. So, like say I'm angry about my car. How exactly is it physical then? Because properties, like physical things, don't have intention whatsoever.
Yeah, they do.
So how can
Yeah, they do. The intentionality is an emergent
Like
property
what?
of physical brains. Next.
property of physical brains?
Yep, it's an emergent property of chemical interactions in physical brains, just like thoughts and ideas
So,
and colors and everything else.
T-Jump is my
So
first
then are
time.
thoughts then spatially locatable then as chemical reactions and like neurons firing, I suppose?
Yep. As soon as we can discover everything about the brain, we will exactly know what they are.
T-Jump.
For sure.
But then how is that then the same though? They don't share properties. Like for instance, if I see a wavelength, right, that causes the experience of red, the wavelength itself is not the experience of red because somebody could have the experience of say brown if they're colorblind from the same wavelength. I mean, there seems to be a disconnect between neurons firing or a chemical reaction and actual experience of thought, the quality of it.
Nope, exact same thing
Yeah,
with
the
water
answer is
and wetness.
panpsychism.
Water and wetness. So wetness doesn't seem like a physical property, but it is. It's an emergent property of other physical
This
things.
is getting kind of sexual, man. Anyways, T-Jump, it's my first time meeting you. What's your religious beliefs?
I'm an atheist.
I have a question for you, T-Jump. So, given the idea,
So does that
of,
mean-
all these things are empirically determined? So, basically, if you are going to try and talk about morals, it's basically irrelevant if you're also a determinist, right?
What? Yeah, it's also
you
a
a
determinist. Yes, I'm a determinist.
And you believe in moral progress as well?
Yep, because morality, in my view, is
How are
descriptive.
those two concepts compatible? How do you actually reconcile those things?
You don't need free will to have morality. No one thinks you do, essentially. Like, I don't know why you'd need.
So, you can't make your own decisions. Are they still moral?
Yes, morality is based on the consequences to wills. It's not based off of actual total decisions.
So, it's based on consequences of decisions that you don't make, right?
Yep. Like if a rock falls on you, that would be immoral in my definition.
Yeah.
Wait,
Yeah, okay.
the analogy to water and wetness doesn't seem to be quite accurate, because to say something has, water within it, right? Isn't it the same as the actual
what is
experience of
wetness? No, what is wetness itself? Not the experience of wetness. What is wetness?
Wetness? I suppose something being wet, having water within it. I suppose like a towel is waterlogged.
It's
so
like
wet.
is it a mental property? Does water have a mind and it's just imagining it?
No, but there's a difference.
Oh yeah, that's
between,
right.
okay,
It's a physical
say,
thing. It's a physical result of an interactions between particles. But wetness isn't like there. You can't discover the wetness by looking at the particles. But if you look at the interaction of the particles, you can say, oh, this kind of interaction is the thing that is wetness. So the same thing applies to intentionality and colors and everything else. It's an emergent property of the brain.
Wetness would be a relative predicate.
Wait, sorry, it's hard to hear you when everyone's talking over you. So, but still, though, there is a disconnect between the physical property of wetness, or H2O atoms, right, being within the towel, and then the actual
Which is the
experience of
exact same
mental.
thing as intentionality. It's going to be a result of emergent properties in the brain and nothing more.
But you could say that, thought and emotion is emergent, these physical processes, without it actually being spatially locatable and physical itself. I mean, how can you spatially locate emotion or thought?
Exactly
if
the
it's
same
not
way
these
you
chemical
spatially
reactions?
locate wetness. It's the same thing. It's all emergent properties have the same kinds of properties.
Well, you can spatially locate the atoms in this circumstance, but you
Right.
can't spatially locate the experience.
Yes, you can. It's exactly like wetness. You can't spatially locate the wetness because it's an interaction between the particles, just like you can't spatially locate the intentionality because it's an interaction between the particles. The interaction in the process of the system is the emergent property. There's no difference.
You can't spatially locate experiences.
Good luck with that. Go publish a paper on it. Have fun.
I mean, the only attempt so far is integrated information theory, which, by the way, has panpsychic assumptions.
Julian
Because it predicts
Tononi,
that
I do
it
know
predicts
him.
that geographical figures or geographical features of
Yes,
the Earth.
yes.
would be
Giuliano Tononi, integrated information theory, not accepted by the majority, but yes, I do know what it is.
Right, and would you accept that it uses panpsychic assumptions?
Yeah, I think Giuliano Tononi is a
In that-
panpsychist.
What's going on here?
So what type of realist are you, Jump, exactly? How do you ascertain what's true about reality? Is it from your senses?
Yep, pretty much.
So to what degree are your senses trustworthy, though? Because we know illusions exist and we know hallucinations exist.
That's
And we know
correct.
secondary properties can change from person to person.
Yep, but there are certain things that can't be illusory. Like I can't believe I exist and be wrong. So there are some things that are definitely not illusory, and then we have to find out which ones are and which ones aren't. Like, so we start with I think, therefore I am, and then I can see I exist. And so from my existence, I can say I am myself and not myself. And so now I get the laws of logic, and I can use the laws of logic to describe my experience and say, I see a camera, but I can imagine a unicorn there, but it's not. So there's some difference between my imagination and my experience. We need some method to differentiate. And the method we use is science, novel testable predictions for lots of sciencey reasons. And based on that, we can differentiate the imaginary things from the real things with a high level of certainty, and that's how we get science.
Mhm. But do you acknowledge, though, that secondary qualities of objects, say their taste or their color, for instance, or the things you acquire with your senses, can be subjective to person? Like, for instance, what's the objective color?
Yes. What you see as red, I could see as green, and we wouldn't know the difference, but that's probably not the case.
Right. So if we remove all these things that then are subjective, right, such as our sensory experiences, then what objectively is still there?
You can't. Those sensory experiences only exist in brains. They're a part of brains. To get rid of them, you have to get rid of the brains.
Right. So, for instance, if I have a tree, right, but I'm not allowed, I take away everything that's subjective, right, like the color of the tree, the feel of the tree.
Yeah, that's literally your brain state. So that's literally the chemicals in your brain you're taking away.
Well, are they though? I mean, they're not the same as chemical properties.
Nope, they are
don't share-
literally the same as the chemical properties. That is what they are. They are emergent properties of the chemical properties. Exactly the same as wetness, which I've answered like 10 times. We're done with this topic. Move on.
No. I want to ask though, what is the tree there if you remove all the secondary properties? It doesn't exist.
The tree is independent of your sense experience of the tree. Stupid question.
How do you prove it's there without your sense experience?
Empirical evidence, science. That's what it does.
It's like
So
a
you're using
circle
your
going back and forth.
So yeah, we're done on this topic. Next question.
Okay.
Yeah, we should all work off the assumption that we do exist.
Vulture.
It seems okay.
Except Darth Dawkins, he does not exist. He is a pea zombie.
So, if propositions correspond to reality, then what is the nature of this correspondence? If I see a sentence like "it is raining outside," what parts? How is it that these words in the sentence? What is it about them coming together?
The words are just a representation of an idea in your head. So it's the idea in your head that corresponds to reality, and the words just represent the idea in your head.
Right.
What do you mean?
So it's a
Inductive
representation of something, maybe a word in our head or something in the world. But the words coming together to form a sentence, like when I see the sentence, "it is raining outside," that's going to correspond or not to a reality. And what's the criteria that satisfies that this
Reality
is
is the criterion. Does it or does
Yeah, I
not
know what you're
correspond to
talking about.
reality?
It's a roundabout, yeah.
So reality is the criteria for
Yeah.
this correspondence.
Yeah, it's like
So do we
comparing
have
it.
an idea already about reality?
No, we don't need to. Like, doesn't make a
We
difference.
don't need to.
No. So we have an idea, and it may or may not correspond to reality, and we don't need to know one way or the other.
Right.
It either does or
We
doesn't.
just have this word, right? We just have this word, reality, or it could be any other word that serves that function. Is that right?
Sure.
Okay. And so we have some kind of where, but I mean, we want to make this
Do we have a
user friendly.
question? Can we like speed it up? What's the question? If the question is what are we testing? What are we testing the sentence against? We're testing it against reality. Reality is the criterion. That's the answer. It's always going to be the answer every time you ask. That's the answer. Reality is the criterion.
So
But
now we're at step A.
But the reality, it seems that we have already a theory
No,
of
no,
reality.
forget
already
our theories don't mean a
before-
damn thing. Our theories are irrelevant. I have an idea. That idea may or may not correspond to reality. What I know, what I think doesn't mean a damn thing. If it does, it's
But
true. If it doesn't,
how
it's
I'm
not true.
using the word theory is as a set of propositions.
Yeah, the propositions are, again, just something in our head. Our head doesn't matter. Our propositions don't matter. Our logic doesn't matter. It's all just stuff in our head. The criterion is reality itself. It's the criterion. The propositions are garbage. They're just
But
language.
if we're going to express the explanation or express a hypothesis or express anything that's going to be scientific, we're going to have to use mathematics to do so, right?
Yes, our epistemic description of it, but not its ontological truth. That's two separate things.
Now, in mathematics, it's already implied, or it's already implicit that there is a logical expression for each mathematical statement.
Again, totally irrelevant. You're confusing the epistemology of what we express and the ontology of the thing itself. So the criterion, the ontology, what you're asking for, is reality. Reality is the ontology. That is the ontological criterion. Our epistemic criterion is irrelevant. It doesn't make a difference to the question. The question is do our ideas correspond to reality? Whether or not we can know doesn't make a damn bit of difference. Whether or not we know they correspond to reality doesn't matter at all.
I think it might be more understood to, basically they're talking about the method by obtaining our knowledge
Yes,
about
that's
basically what is true
epistemology.
about reality.
Correct.
That's epistemology. Epistemology does not matter. The criterion of how we determine, like what makes something, an idea correspond to reality, that's ontology. Our epistemology is irrelevant. Whether or not we know it corresponds to reality doesn't make a difference to the ontology. The criterion.
So it's a matter of ontology that a proposition corresponds to reality.
What? It is an
You're-
ontological
is that
fact.
what you're saying?
If a proposition corresponds to reality, that's an ontological fact, not an epistemic fact. So if you want to know what is the criterion we're using to assess if a proposition corresponds to reality, it's reality, whether or not we can know it or not. So if you're saying, how does an epistemology come to a conclusion that a proposition corresponds to reality? It's just pick your preferred epistemology. There's lots of different ways. Fallibilism is the answer.
Well, I don't know what fallibilism is in this context. I thought you were the correspondence theory in truth.
No, I didn't say that. So
No, dude.
Well, he said that propositions correspond to reality. That's what makes propositions true.
yeah, I'm a fallibilist also. So Google fallibilism.
Well, I mean, it's not going to make a difference whether you were mistaken or not as to the question as to the truth of the proposition. I mean, if the proposition was true, then it corresponded to reality. And I would say
that's the
vice
ontology
versa,
part.
right?
Yeah, that's the ontology part.
Okay. I mean, of course, it's possible that person could be mistaken, right?
Yes.
And that's the fallibilist part, right?
Yes. Like you may not even care if you can have an imagination of a unicorn on Mars, and that could be true. Like that proposition could be true. You wouldn't know.
Right. I wasn't interested in the fallibilist part when I was.
Yeah, this isn't the part of the fallibilist part. I'm saying if you just imagined a unicorn on Mars, you don't think it's true at all. You're just imagining a unicorn on Mars because you think it's fun. That proposition, there is a unicorn on Mars, can be true. That proposition can correspond to reality, whether you intend it to or not.
Mm-hmm.
The truth of the proposition is independent of our epistemology or our intentions or our beliefs about it. Makes no difference.
Right.
Yeah.
The correspondence theory of truth is going to get a logical expression, though, right?
I have no idea what you're talking about. The correspondence theory of truth is going to get a logical expression isn't a complete sentence.
Well, isn't it the case that a theory being a set of propositions, that a correspondence theory of truth is going to be also a set of propositions?
Sure.
Yeah, you're not really.
All right, so if
yeah,
it's going to
the
be a set of
the epistemology itself doesn't correspond to reality. The epistemology is a thing we've made up like a language.
Well, I mean, I agree that I think phonetic script languages are definitely made up.
All languages are made up.
And logical languages, though, I take to be, discovered.
No, logical languages are invented. Like I said, I exist, I think, therefore I am, and then I make up language to describe that. Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, classical logic, very first sentence, logic is a formal language consisting of semantics and something, something, something.
Yeah, it's a formal language.
Yep, made up by humans.
Well, the notations are.
Yes, so logic is a language that describes reality, like English. Languages have three essential types of sentences. One is one that corresponds to reality, one is one that does not correspond to reality, and one that is self-contradictory. So, for example, in English, I can see that is a tree. That sentence corresponds to reality. Or I could say that is a Klingon. That sentence does not correspond to reality. And I can say that is a married bachelor. That sentence is self-contradictory. Math and logic both have the exact same things. A sentence that corresponds to reality would be like 1 + 1 = 2 or A = A. A sentence that does not correspond to reality would be like 1 plus, or what is F = MA times 47. That would be a good example of a mathematical sentence that does not correspond to reality. And something that's self-contradictory would be like 1 + 1 = 7, or A does not equal A, or something. So all languages, math, logic, English, all have those three kinds of sentences: those that correspond, those that do not correspond, and those that are self-contradictory. They're all languages made up by humans.
It's curious that mathematical propositions are going to be the kind of thing that corresponds to reality. If they do, how do we know if they do?
All languages can correspond to reality. That is a tree. That sentence corresponds to reality, just like 1 + 1 = 2 corresponds to reality. There's no difference there.
Okay. So what reality do they correspond to if they do? Since they do.
The only one, the reality is the reality they correspond to.
I feel like you're not. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I feel like you're just not asking substantial questions. You're just like,
yeah. How do you escape like relativism, runaway cultural relativism, or something like that?
Cultural relativism has nothing to do with epistemology. That has to do with politics. Like what?
You don't think that cultural relativism has anything to do with morality and ethics, for instance?
Yes, they have implications.
Yeah, you don't think morality and ethics have to do with epistemology?
I'm a moral realist. I think morality is objective. I'm not a relativist. That's how I escape it.
So if terms and mathematical propositions refer, which I take it that they do.
I was kind of asking, like, what would be your objection to it? I mean, you just stated that.
Well, I think it's
you're
wrong.
Just something else.
I think I think morality is objective. I think it's not relative or subjective.
Right, but earlier you told me that you think that we merely impose meaning.
Cat is here.
Hello. I was told to.
Hi, Creationist Cat.
Hey there. Guys, I don't have a great deal of time. I didn't just found out about this, and somebody told me to jump in and debate TJump. I don't know what I'd be debating.
Yeah, it would be awesome if you guys could have even a short conversation. He's a famous atheist YouTuber.
Yeah,
Do you know who he is?
I've seen some of his modern day debates.
Hey, how's it
And,
going? Nice to meet you.
how's it going, sir? How I appreciate well some of your debates. There's some debates where I'm like, yeah, that guy's spot on, and there's others where I think we differ, but that's okay. Differing is that happens.
Perfectly normal.
Especially if you get to know nearly every topic that someone has an opinion on, usually you're going to disagree strongly with them sooner or later, right?
Yeah, it's very rare that I find a person who is exactly like me and I agree with about everything. It's not too often that occurs.
So, I mean, I guess I'll just ask a follow-up question on what I heard. And you'll have to excuse me because, I mean, I do listen to kind of some philosophical discussions and whatnot, but I have sort of like a poor memory sometimes for certain terminology. And I guess I'll just ask, you say that you don't, you believe that there's an objective reality and that our society, culture. So basically what you're saying is that if we were in some sort of societal vacuum, morals would still kind of be the same as you see them now?
Yes.
Relating to,
So I think morals are a higher order emergent property like fitness. So fitness is a thing independent of humans. It's the ability for certain organisms to survive in more environments. That is an objective quality of reality. It's independent of human minds. If human minds didn't exist, there would still be fitness. Morality is the same kind of a thing, a higher order emergent property. Where fitness describes like how organisms can survive in an environment, morality describes how organisms can interact in an environment. So you can search moral naturalism on Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy if you want a better definition, because I don't have it all memorized, but that's essentially the position that morality is a higher order emergent property like fitness.
And do you think that morality has the capability of like shifting over time due to like for instance, okay?
Yes.
I think when it comes to let's say like what's the term? Not pedophilia, but I guess situations in which adults are having some sort of relations with minors, meaning somewhere between like 14 to 18. I think that's somewhat morally objectionable. However, hundreds of years ago, or maybe even thousands of years ago, in which the life expectancy was far shorter for human beings, I could understand how maybe some people who reached their 20s would have, would reproduce with people people of childbearing age.
Right, when the life expectancy was like 25. Yes, there's definitely moral progress. So yes, societies do have moral change over time, and just like science has change over time, but that doesn't mean the scientific world we're describing isn't objective. So even if our subjective interpretation of morality is definitely socially constructed, I think there is an objective thing there that we are referring to, which is the higher order emergent property like fitness. So yes, our current conception of morality as whatever we think is right or wrong is a social construction, but it refers to something objective, just like science refers to something objective, even though our particular scientific models may be socially constructed.
Do you prescribe to the idea that among other people, Sam Harris puts forward that we can more or less scientifically determine certain things that are right or wrong, or like morally?
Well, I disagree with Sam Harris.
And I mean, and correct me if you think that I'm kind of not just explaining his stance on the subject. I think you probably understand what I mean here.
Yeah. So Sam Harris says that we can discover morality by looking at brain states and saying if our well brain is going to correspond to some brain state, and we can discover it that way. I would not agree with that. No. So I would say that morality can potentially be empirically tested. Like, for example, if you could make novel testable predictions and say, if I have this theory of objective morality, like if it's a law of nature or something that affects our brains like gravity, and we can potentially do some tests, then yes, morality could be empirically tested in that way. Or if it's a higher order emergent property, I don't know how exactly you would empirically test like fitness, exactly, just like description of how things interact in the environment. So I think that's kind of like what morality is a description of how agents interact within an environment. So potentially I think it could be testable.
Well, let me ask another follow-up question. And this, I'm guessing this is something that you may have covered, but I just got here. So I'm curious, how do you determine what is and is not moral? Like, do you have some sort of system in order to do that?
Yeah, so I look at moral intuition and moral progress. That's what most philosophers do. That's the evidence of morality, the phenomenon of morality we're trying to explain. I look at those things, I try to find the pattern in them, and I think the pattern is a principle that I say any involuntary imposition of will is immoral. That's the pattern I've come to. And so that's my conclusion of what morality is, and then I use that to try and make predictions, and if I'm right, and if I get the predictions right, that would be evidence.
What I'm trying to square here, and I guess maybe you've explained it and I just didn't quite chew it over well enough. But let's take the issue of veganism. Okay, I'm not a vegan. I do personally think that they, in spite of the fact of not being a vegan, I'll admit that I think that they have a pretty strong moral argument. But let's say several years, decades from now, we have a method of eating meat that, or synthetic meat that is absolutely, just every bit as nutritious, perhaps even more so, and tastes exactly like the meat that we have. I think in a circumstance like that, and then also provided that it was cheap, easy to access, and not expensive. Do you think that would be a shift in morality on that, in a sense, on that?
There already is a shift in morality. We're seeing it all over the world that, as resources become more plentiful and we can allow for more things that have consciousness to live without us intentionally killing them, our entire society will start to see those things as having moral worth. So as the measure of moral progress is as a society has enough resources to allow the people who are seen as marginalized groups, less valuable in society, to live without it damaging the society, then their moral worth will be seen as more valuable by the society, that's how moral progress works. So as our society continues to grow and we gain more resources, it means that more people in society are going to start to acknowledge the pain of animals and see that the pain we do to them is immoral and we shouldn't do that anymore. Absolutely. That's going to increase more and more as we continue to progress in our technological advancements, for sure.
Sure. Some guy with the with an avatar that has I forget his name. It's definitely a white supremacist. Jared Taylor just DM'd me and said, "Stop stuttering, please." I'm sorry, dude. Sometimes I stutter, especially when I'm very tired. That's just something that I do. So you can fuck off, especially because it looks like you are.
Well, no, I'm not a white supremacist. I'm not even white.
Okay, he's muted.
Yeah, well, then why do you have an avatar of Jared Taylor? I'm just saying, like, you're being an asshole, okay? Like, some people stutter. It's something that I've dealt with my entire life, and that's a really obnoxious thing to just write someone and say, "Stop stuttering, please." Okay, so screw you. Sorry, TJump. That sort of like kind of just set me off a little bit.
Yeah, no problem.
And yeah. Anyhow, I don't know. I mean, I know people said that they would like me to debate you. I don't know exactly what we would debate over. There may be some differences between.
How about the existence of God?
Oh, I thought TJump was an atheist.
Maybe like you actually play your persona of the cat versus me or something.
I'm not always.
Voter fraud is good. Voter fraud is good.
Yeah, I'm actually going to be just so everyone here knows, the channel is going to be lately, for those of you who haven't checked in on CC, the channel that is, I have been doing more and more stuff as myself. And
Girl, fuck my balls. I don't care about this. Oh, hey, Christian, it's Cat. I actually like your content. Bye. Sorry.
Okay. All right. So So anyway, yeah, I won't go way into that. I'm just letting everyone know that the channel is changing to Hey, it's Vadim pretty soon. So
cool.
Yeah, I mean, TJump, are you an atheist?
Yes, very much so.
Okay, so I don't know if there is much difference there. I guess this is the only thing that I can think off the top of my head that maybe you and I can just discuss very briefly because I don't have a lot of time. I've seen several of your debates, and I did see one, maybe you've done more than one. I believe it was with Papa Bird Jake.
Yep.
From Jake and Hannah.
Yeah, Black Lives
on
Matter
BLM.
versus All Lives Matter.
And right. And let's say for the sake of the argument that what you have.
You cut out. I can't hear you.
He was suppressed by the Democrats.
Probably.
Problems.
This is the fruits of a Biden presidency.
All right, I have a question for TJump on his moral system.
Okay, well,
did we move on to another topic?
He got back for a second and then he refreshed. He was talking and then he left.
Okay.
Hello?
Are you back, Creationist Cat?
Yeah, I'm back. I don't know if that was a problem on my end or if somebody kicked me somehow.
I don't think anybody kicked you but yeah, you cut off right after you said Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter, and you said something like, if we assume you're, and then cut out.
Oh, okay. If we assume that you're correct on, because inside that conversation, the thrust of it was just you guys talking about, I believe, like police shootings, but there are other problems with the justice system that affect disproportionately the Black community, like for instance sentencing. There are studies that
I totally agree. Like one of the biggest examples is the stopping people on highways. There's a disproportionate amount of stopping like African Americans during the day, and that disproportion goes away during the night. I absolutely agree that there are definitely systemic issues that are racist. I just think the one that Black Lives Matter has centered around, the shootings from police officers, I don't think that one's a bad example. So I think that using that as an example is more showmanship that I disagree with. I think it's not supported by the facts, but there are definitely lots of examples that would be supported by the facts that I would support Black Lives Matter on.
What do you guys disagree on? Wait, so hold on. So wait, why did you initially have this line of inquiry? Like, do you think TJump is a Republican, or like, what are you trying to do?
No, I mean, he was very opposed to it seemed rather opposed to Black Lives Matter in several respects. And I'm not saying that I don't know what his politics are outside of that one conversation. That's about as political a conversation as I've heard him have. So, I mean, I happen to think that I agree with you. I do wish. What?
Well, let's just ask him real quick though, so everyone knows what's going on.
I'm a centrist. I'm a centrist, so I have my own political theory. I agree with the Democrats on some things, Republicans on some things, and Libertarians on some things, but they're all wrong about most things. So, yeah, would you wanted to follow up on that, Creationist Cat, on my answer?
Yeah, you could call me Vadim, by the way, if you want.
Vadim.
Yeah, I just, because I think that the conclusion that you came to is that Black Lives Matter is kind of maybe irrelevant is the wrong term, but just rather like not doing. Well, why don't you clarify? I don't want to put words in your mouth. Like, can you succinctly say how you feel about Black Lives Matter as like an entity, like you do not support Black Lives Matter? Would that be safe to say?
Yeah, but the main reason I don't support them is because their flagship issue is just, I think, factually false. Like the same reason I don't support Christianity. Jesus didn't rise from the dead. I mean, Christianity does lots of good things for people too. They also do lots of bad things, but I don't support them mainly because their main thing is false. So that's my main issue with Black Lives Matter.
At the same time, though, you do recognize that. I mean, you said something about, maybe I think you used the word showmanship. I like personally, I wish that there was a way to kind of galvanize America and get them to center on these issues, like more important issues. That, I mean, not that the police shootings are not an important issue to me, but for instance, the sentencing of blacks, like there are studies that show that you can have someone with the same record, even I think close to the same economic background, and much more of the time they will receive stiffer sentences. And things like that are injustices that they face that are really detrimental to their to Black culture in general. And I could name other things, but there's a handful of things that I could name that make for me that makes Black Lives Matter an important cause, I guess, if you will. So. I mean, like, do you?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there are definitely.
Do you think if they were championing those issues more, that you would be more on their side?
Definitely, if they were supporting the things that are really like evidentially supported by all of the evidence we have, definitely I'd be behind them. The only reason I don't support them is because this one main issue doesn't seem to be supported by the evidence, and the fact that they're pushing it seems dishonest to me. Because you're right, it definitely galvanizes people, that's for sure. But I think it's dishonest in the way that they're doing it, and that's the issue I have with Black Lives Matter. I don't think their main issue corresponds to reality, but there are definitely lots of examples that do, like the sentencing issues, or the fact that more African Americans are pulled over in highways during the day and doesn't happen during the night. There are lots and lots of cases of real racism, for sure. I just don't think that their main issue is the right one. And I think if they were really genuine about stopping police violence, they would be equally as up in arms about the white Americans that are shot and killed in the exact same way as the African Americans who are. And I think that they're not portraying or focusing on that as much is something I see as not as honest as it should be. So my main issue with Black Lives Matter is pretty much just their flagship one doesn't seem to be as honest as it should be. There are lots of cases they could definitely use.
Is it dishonest to dwell on that issue, though, if there are a host of historical and historical issues that kind of and you'll have to apologize, because usually when I debate, I prepare for it and I'm just kind of spitballing here. But in my mind, there are all these kind of socioeconomic factors that make the of course blacks could commit more crime, but there are reasons for these, and most of these things are things that over time can be addressed and corrected. And so do you think that like it has no relevance to bring that up if there are issues that we can address and correct and look at and hopefully make policies that better them?
No, I would agree that there are lots of issues we can fix, but I think that those issues affect both white and black people equally, essentially. And so they're like, ending the war on drugs would be a huge benefit to everyone, essentially. And I think we should definitely try to end it. But I think that my issue is when you say this disproportionately affects African Americans and discount the fact that it's killing twice as many white people in the exact same way. I don't think that's an honest way to approach the topic.
Well, when you say, do you mean per capita?
Yes. So by population compared to crime rates, not to population. So,
okay.
So if the crime rate is like African Americans commit 37.5% of violent crime, and they're 37% of the victims of police shootings, essentially. So it's exactly proportional. I don't think that's evidence that the police are racist. There are definitely things that do count as evidence the police are racist, like the thing you mentioned, but that isn't one of them. So that's why I disagree with that particular point that they keep bringing up.
Okay, cool. Well, certainly if I was prepared and kind of had, because I've never debated this topic before, it's something that I would be interested in debating, but it's just not something that I've, usually I kind of have a process where I take notes and I just really study things. And I feel like with most of it's been an interesting conversation. I know that there's a lot of people here who want to talk to you. Some people are probably ticked off that I've stuttered. So I'm going to kind of just give the floor back over to everyone else. Maybe one day we'll get a chance.
Well, thank you.
Have a more effective conversation on a topic that I prepared, but it's been nice just kind of just shooting the shit with you.
Yeah, it was nice to meet you.
Well, okay, so creation.
Yes.
So creation. Creation is that.
Alt-right guy who's about to
I'm not delusional. Be quiet for a second. So,
I'm gonna mute him for a second. Vidim, it was really nice to meet you, and I'm happy to talk with you later. I actually have to go too, so I'll see you guys later. It was nice chatting with you guys. See you probably next week. Peace out.
Okay.